Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to House Economic Matters. Today is Wednesday, March 27th. We have 12 bills, a total of 25 witnesses. First up is Senate Bill 910. They're not here. Okay. We were told we were starting with 910. All right, we'll go to Senate Bill 216.
Chairman. Delegates, my name is Michael Burns. I'm the Director of the Maryland Uninsured Employers Fund. I'm here to ask you to vote for Senate Bill 216. It is a bill that increases the penalty for employers who fail to protect their employees with required workers' compensation insurance. I had frankly prepared different testimony to give today, but what happened yesterday changed all that. Because what happened yesterday is why employers must have workers' compensation insurance. As you know, people working on the Key Bridge yesterday when a terrible accident happened. No one would have expected it, but it happened. Some men were injured, some men were killed. My agency has already researched and found that their employer, thank God, apparently has workers' compensation insurance. So the victims of yesterday's tragedy and/or their families will receive speedy compensation as a result. But what if they hadn't been insured? Their employer, like too many Maryland employers, might just have not carried that legally mandated insurance. And that happens for a lot of reasons. But whatever the reason, the result is the same. The victims and their families would be cheated out of their protections that your predecessors mandated into law 100 years ago. Their injuries and their losses would be even harder to bear, all because an employer broke the law and failed in their duty to protect them. That's illegal. And worse, it's cruel and it's wrong and it's intolerable. Maryland law requires comp insurance, but some employers just don't get it. And your constituents pay the price. Our workers deserve better than that. Senate Bill 216 will punish employers who break the law. It will increase the penalty on employers who break the law and leave their employees unprotected from the current amount to $25,000 in occurrence, a 150% increase. This is a pro-worker bill. This is a pro-business bill. It will get more workers protected and insured. As we saw yesterday, accidents happen, but not obeying this law is not an accident. It's a choice. Help make it an expense. Please vote for Senate Bill 216. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Crosby and distinguished members of the committee. For the record, I'm Maureen Quinn, the chair of the Workers' Compensation Commission. Unlike many agency heads who appear before you, Director Burns and I have actually worked together all of this session to come up with a compromise. The original bill had a mandatory fine of $25,000 for anyone who was uninsured, regardless of the length and regardless of the circumstances. So I'm here today to make sure that our compromise is protected. So the law, as it came out of the Senate, provides for a fine not to exceed $225,000, not $250,000, but $25,000. And the purpose of that amendment was to preserve the commissioner's ability to hear evidence and to tailor the fine to the gravity of the offense. So nearly all of the businesses that we find are extremely small, and many are young and first-time business owners. And there's just simply no justification for fining anyone in that circumstance, such as temporary illness or a payroll company error, the same amount as someone who has a roofing or a tree service company that intentionally fails to buy workers' compensation insurance. So without that amendment, we would be strongly opposed to the bill, but we have this compromise and it's gotten through the Senate and we ask for your support.
Commissioner Quinn, thank you for not screaming at us. Delegate Irons.
It's in the.
My question goes back to what you started with, and I appreciate your comments about the bridge, but the state doesn't hire workers that businesses that don't have workers' comp. So I don't know how that related to this. And wouldn't the people that caused the accident, wouldn't they be liable for all this, or maybe I'm just confused? How does workman's comp help this situation?
They're covered under workers' comp.
They're covered under a whole lot of other
They're,
things.
the
Okay,
company.
I appreciate what you said, but I didn't get it.
The company
That's
that this is a complicated legal issue, but the ship is not the issue. The issue is, does the company that employed the workers who were hurt or killed have workers' compensation insurance or not? Because if they don't, then you would look to see if perhaps the shipping company did, and under some kind of a legal theory, you could collect from them. But if not, what would happen is they would, theoretically, the company that employed the workers would be responsible. But as Chair Quinn can tell you, and how we get involved, many of these uninsured employers just decide they're not going to pay, even if there's an order of the commission. And what happens is then there's a process, and eventually the uninsured employers fund becomes responsible. I can tell you that that accident was such that had it gone that scenario, the UEF had been responsible, the amount of expenditure on that would have been significant, very significant.
Yeah, my point, I guess, was the fact that the state should not be hiring anybody without unemployment, without that workman's comp.
Well,
and I appreciate your comments, but I just think they were, in my opinion, unnecessary, but I appreciate your comments.
Yes,
I think it relates to, sir, it doesn't relate to some, my question's over. I appreciate you.
Oh, okay.
Delegate Persky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, when was the last increase in fines, and where did the impetus come from? From the UEF agency or the workers' compensation? And is it based upon data over the past 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? I know I looked in the fiscal note to try and see that, but I just, for the record, for our committee members, so they understand why now all of a sudden, you know, the request. Certainly we could use yesterday's incident, but I'm just curious what's basing your, move for this bill.
Thank you for your question, Delegate. It comes from a budget hearing last year in the Senate, where not only the Uninsured Employers Fund, but the Public Service Commission, as well as the People's Council came, and the issue of fines and collecting fines and penalties came up. And all three of us basically said, we have these fines that are very low and difficult to collect. And the Senate requested in the Joint Chairman's report that my agency prepare and submit, which we did, a report on the issue of whether or not the fines for failure to have insurance should be increased, the penalty. That entire report is attached in the written testimony I've supplied to you all. And as it explains, since you've asked, I've also included a chart from other states which shows that Maryland's $10,000 penalty is very low. It's one of the least effective penalties and amounts in the country. And as in addition to that, I've also enclosed information that a number of states actually make this a felony, a go-to-deal crime for failure to have unemployment insurance coverage. And we don't do that. I urge you all very strongly to read that report that I prepared for the legislature. I think it'll answer your question. As to the $10,000, it goes back decades. I'm not sure how long it's been like that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I guess what I would say on, if it was on the House side, it'd be nice on the House side, if somebody's on the workers' comp subcommittee, that they would know that. Because if it's a Senate hearing, we don't often get that. I mean, obviously I saw the report, but there are folks here sometimes when a bill's cross-filed that helps. That's all the point I want to make. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further questions, that concludes this bill hearing. Next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Senate Bill 225. Oh, and the Darth Vader music begins. Whenever you're ready, Andrew.
What are you gonna do?
Go ahead, bud. Good seeing you.
Good seeing you as well. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Crosby, members of the House Economic Matters Committee. For the record, Andrew Fulgeniti with the Maryland Department of Labor. I've got a series of, I think, 8 different sunset-related bills before you today. The first is Senate Bill 225. Which extends the sunset date of our Occupational Safety and Health Advisory Board by 10 years from July 1, 2024 to 2034. I'll end there and answer any questions you may have.
I don't think we're gonna have too many questions, Andrew. However, I'll just publicly make, I guess for everybody's awareness, kind of our take has been, we've had enough of sunset extensions. And so we would like to just make these things forever and add a report so we don't have to do 15 bills today on sunset extensions. And you're aware, I'm just letting everybody else know.
I am aware some of
Yep.
these have been altered differently. This one went to a different committee, so it's
Gotcha.
10-year.
Okay, just go ahead and roll through them. And when you start, whatever, just tell me the
Sure.
bill number.
So next one is Senate Bill 261. For the record, Andrew Fulgeniti with the Maryland Department of Labor. Senate Bill 261 deals with the State Board of Barbers. It's a sunset extension and report. As originally brought, this bill would extend the State Board of Barbers by 10 years. It was amended in the Senate to reduce that extension to 3 years. And it includes a report by the board to the Joint Audit and Evaluation Committee by July 1 of 2025. That's for a favorable report. All right, next bill is Senate Bill 264. For the record, Andrew Fulgeniti with the Maryland Department of Labor. Senate Bill 264 extends the State Board of Cosmetologists sunset date by, again, amended in the Senate to 3-year extension with a report by July 1, 2025 to the Joint Audit and Evaluation Committee. We'd ask for a favorable report. All right, Senate Bill 288, again, Andrew Fulgeniti with the Maryland Department of Labor. Senate Bill 288 extends the State Board of Individual Tax Preparers sunset date and includes a report to the Joint Audit and Evaluation Committee. This sunset date is extended by 1 year because the expiration was not till 2026. So it's set to expire in 2027, and again, includes a report to the Joint Audit Committee by July 1, 2025. We'd ask for a favorable committee report. Next bill is Senate Bill 296. Andrew Fulgeniti with the Maryland Department of Labor. Senate Bill 296 extends the State Board of Professional Land Surveyors, again, by 3 years as amended in the Senate, and includes a report to the Joint Audit and Evaluation Committee. We'd ask for a favorable committee report. Okay, Senate Bill 297 actually is not a sunset extension bill. Senate Bill, for the record, Andrew Fulgeniti with the Maryland Department of Labor. This bill alters the qualifications for appointment to the State Board of Professional Engineers. It alters the membership. So currently you'd have to have 12 years in total of practice to be a member, to be appointed to a member of the Board of Professional Engineers. This lowers that threshold to 10 years. This is an effort by the board to entice younger professionals into the industry. It still has all the requirements that 5 of those 10 years be in professional charge and responsible charge. And it is an effort across our boards to attract members. It is a volunteer position, so it's hard to get people often to participate in these. So it's an effort by the board to increase participation. We would ask for a favorable committee report. Senate Bill 298 is not a sunset bill. Senate Bill 298, for the record, Andrew Fulgeniti with the Maryland Department of Labor. Senate Bill 298 addresses a provision of the State Board of Electricians. Some of you may recall in 2021, the General Assembly moved licensing for electricians fully to the State Board of Electricians. Previous to that, we just licensed master electricians. Now we license journeyman and apprentice electricians as well. One of the things that was found is that one of the things that did not carry over when that transition happened was the ability for the board to assess civil penalties for licensed practice. So all of our other mechanical licensing boards, including HVAC, plumbing, etc., have the ability when there's an infraction found to gauge what the repercussions enforcement for that will be. Right now, the State Board of Electricians only has the ability to revoke a license for a violation of the code for a licensed electrician. So our litigators brought this to our attention and asked us to bring a bill that would allow them some flexibility to assess civil penalties for violations that are minor in nature. And that's what this bill seeks to achieve. Okay, this is the last bill. Senate Bill 307 is a sunset bill. We do have, we are favorable with amendments to this bill. Senate Bill 307 extends the Board of Boiler rules. The amendment would alter the membership of the board. It was brought to our attention that it did not have labor participation on the board. So it adds an additional member to the board of boiler rules. We have an amendment that would clarify that it's a labor representative that we are seeking to add to this board. With that, we'd ask for a favorable report.
You have one virtual. Mr. Williams, go ahead, sir.
All right, good afternoon, Chair Wilson, members of the committee. My name is Martin Williams. I'm the National Coordinator of State Legislative Affairs for the International Brotherhood of Boilermakers. Boilermakers are international building trades labor union, approximately 47,000 members in the United States and Canada, including 700 members in Maryland and the surrounding region. And our members work in multiple heavy industries, including power generation, oil and gas, steel, shipbuilding. The boiler safety program is tasked with specifying minimum standards for construction, installation, maintenance, and repair of boilers and pressure vessels in the state, as well as setting guidelines for certifying those vessels and that they meet established minimum standards. The current board is comprised of 10 members, 9 appointed by the governor, with who are either working in or familiar with the boiler and pressure vessel industry. But as Andrew noted, the current board does not have labor representation, and given the hazards associated with construction and maintenance of boilers and pressure vessels, we feel that it's important for labor to be part of those conversations, especially on how to mitigate those hazards. So we believe that this amendment will serve the public interest by expanding the board to include labor representation. It'll also make the composition of the board consistent with about 12 other states and their respective boiler safety councils. So respectfully, we ask for a favorable report.
Thank you, sir. Seeing no questions, that concludes this bill hearing. Next, we have Senate Bill 542, Delegate Brooks. And sorry, throwback there. He wishes he was still in the house. Yeah, come on up. And then is Lisa May here from the Realtors? Okay. You start when ready.
Vice Chair Crosby and members of the committee, for the record, I'm Kim Shiloh, Chief of Staff for Senator Ben Brooks. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you on SB 542, Real Estate Brokers Brokerage Agreements Requirements. The purpose of this bill is to make clarifying amendments to the Maryland Real Estate Brokerage Act concerning compensation paid to the buyer and seller representatives. This is there is an HB cross file, although not labeled as such, HB 1239, which was heard before this committee, but had a late hearing, so wasn't voted on.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. Lisa May with Maryland Realtors here in favor of Senate Bill 542. This bill deals with the compensation that is paid to real estate agents as part of a written brokerage agreement. And as was mentioned, Delegate Boafo did have the cross file of this bill, so it will likely sound familiar to you. In a nutshell, what these bills require is for the brokerage agreement to outline with specificity what compensation is owed to the brokerage and who is responsible for paying it. Now, since both of these bills were heard, our National Association has entered into a proposed settlement agreement that deals with this very issue. So naturally, that may raise some questions as to what that settlement means for this bill. So with the minute that I have left, I'll try to address that.
Lisa, real quick.
Yes, please.
I'm actually fascinated by this, so if you blow the time, it's fine.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. I feel very special, Mr. Vice Chair. Thank you. Many parts of the proposed settlement were already required in Maryland law and have been for many years. The one part that was not outlined, in a perfectly clear manner in Maryland law is actually addressed by this bill. So from our standpoint, we believe that this legislation is very complementary to what is happening with the national settlement. And it's going to ensure that all Maryland consumers, whether they are working with an agent that is covered by this proposed settlement or not, are all given the same amount of information and the same level of transparency in their real estate transaction. So I'm happy to answer any other questions that members of the committee may have. We thank Senator Brooks. We thank Delegate Boafo for their work on this issue, and we do ask for your favorable report.
Not even close to the time. Okay. Seeing no questions, that concludes this hearing. Thanks for coming over, Kim. Tell Senator Brooks we said hi.
Absolutely.
Senate Bill 262.
Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee, I think I'm the only one who signed up, but I brought the whole team here. If there's some complicated questions, I need to cheat. I'm Michael Laurie, Deputy Secretary of State, pleased to present Senate Bill 262, favorable with amendments. The JPR committee was supposed to add an amendment, but it's a lot harder to get an amendment added to a bill when you're not working for the legislature, I've learned. So we're hoping that will be attached to this bill. This is a simple bill that clarifies what we thought was already the law, but we got an audit report in 2022 that said we should be sending the collections for charities to CCU. You can imagine it's hard to claw things back from CCU. I'm sure you've had experience with constituents. Charities are unique. When you're working with charities, there's a lot of turnover. So what we usually try to do is work with the charities to bring them into compliance with the law. And since there is a lot of turnover, it would be inappropriate to ding them and impose the requirement that they send something to CCU for a fixed amount, because we negotiate with them to determine what is appropriate to bring them into compliance. The bill simply clarifies what we already thought was law. The amendment that we talked to the chair about in the council should have been included again, and the JPR chairman has agreed to accept it. It's just getting rid of language that's highlighted in our written testimony with the imposition or collection of. It's somewhat redundant to where we are now with the law. So we just thought through legal counsel, it would be very important to remove that language, because it might set us back where we were before, where they're going to assume we have to collect this money. That's not appropriate to collect it as a fixed amount. Again, this is something that's negotiated to bring them into compliance. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Delegate Queen. No, Delegate Queen, you hit the button first. It's like Jeopardy.
I did. Oh,
What is not or who is not Fisher?
who is not Fisher? Actually, I know a lot of groups that are interested in the bill, because can you just kind of walk me through the process and what happens now? Because they're, like you said, when there's turnover, some people forget to file things. And so can you walk me through what would happen? You contact them first and how that goes?
Yeah, so there's there's the imposition of a late fee, but it's not supposed to necessarily be collected as a fixed amount. So we give them a few bites of the apple. They have a period, we have discretion to defer the fee collection after a period of extension that may be granted by the Secretary of State's office. And then there's also a 60-day grace period at the end of the organization's fiscal year. So within that time period, we're trying to get them to be registered so that the public knows they are in compliance with some of the law that we have in place to make sure the money goes to the intended purpose for which the donor wants to provide it. And if they're not in compliance, there's a late fee again after some of that grace period. And if that accrues over time, we still work with them to potentially lower that fee, but it is a late fee that's important for the compliance.
So can the late fee be abated by some letter or something that they send to say?
Exactly.
Okay,
Yes,
that's
we
what
work
I
with
need to
them.
know. All right, thank you.
Thank you. My question is more about the fact that there seem to be a lot of nonprofits that also own real property. I know that's not necessarily what this deals with, but I'm curious if your office, when you do suspend someone for not paying, for whatever the reason is, if there's any notification given to SSTAT about how these folks maybe should start be paying taxes.
That's interesting. I'll have to get back to you on that. I know some of I don't think so, but there is a back and forth with SSTAT. You could be registered with them and still not be registered with us and be in compliance. It's important because we want to make sure that they are a charity and people are soliciting the money and it's being sent to the purpose for which they're soliciting. and that's separate than a business function. So if they're out of compliance with SDAT, that would be for them to address. But on our end, it's important to have the distinction because they're not necessarily functioning as a
And I
business.
mean,
They're
I'm
still-
only asking because there is a real scam in some cases. And I've been told this by a number of my friends from Baltimore City, where a developer will purchase a property and create a bogus nonprofit. And then get tax abatements or not have to pay property taxes at all. And I was just wondering if the right hand was talking to the left hand, because it'd be great to.
No, it's a good point. I think that enforcement mechanism wouldn't be in our office, but we should cooperate. That's a good point.
Thanks, appreciate it.
You need to stop talking to Ampry. All right. That concludes this bill hearing.
Thank you.
We have one bill left. Senator Rosa Pep, he said he'd be here at 2:30. So sit tight for a minute. All right, so this is what we're gonna do. We are gonna stop the live stream. We will get set up for our voting session. We can't get Rosa Pep on the phone.